Hello and welcome to another movie analysis from Karen's Colors. I'm Dr. Karen and I welcome you here to my channel. Now, normally when I look at a film, I generally have a particular process that I undertake. I usually submit the details of the film's reception first, and that's followed by a character introduction and then an overview of the plot. After that, I generally focus on the primary character costume colours and a few of the ambience colours as they are necessary. And the preparation for this particular film was fairly similar. I'd already done most of it, including going through and looking at each of the images in detail. And then I discovered that there were quite a number of reviews of the colours used in this film. The film, of course, is La La Land. La La Land I hadn't seen before, but it had piqued my interest because of the number of awards that it had won. And when I found all of those other colour reviews, of course, I had to stop and read them. That required me then to devise an alternative analytic journey. And so I've decided to choose one of those recent websites. This one comes from December 2025, so it's not that old. And I'm going to test the theories that were presented in that review. If you haven't been here before, you might be overwhelmed by some of the information because I do go into a great deal of detail. And for that reason, I'm sorry that this video is going to be a little longer than my usual colour reviews of movies. Now, La La Land is actually classified as a musical, but it also has many of the elements of a romantic comedy. Romantic comedies, as in terms of their colour content, generally have their males dressed in blue and brown and what I call achroma, which is the link between black, white, and grey. And rarely we have the main character also in red. The colour story is generally carried by female characters, and the ambience colours are used to enhance those aspects of the storyline. La La Land, as we can see as we go through, is a little bit different. The two protagonists of this film are Mia, who is an aspiring actress and aspiring playwright, and Sebastian, known as Seb, who is a jazz enthusiast, who also has his own goals to own a club for playing jazz. If we examine the story of La La Land in terms of the rom-com trajectory, then we begin with the primary character's goals and aspirations being kept quite separately. Then we see the attraction of the potential love interest between the two protagonists, followed by some sort of disruptive element which leads to their separation. Then there is time out to reconsider the options, and that time out is often shown as montages to demonstrate the passing of time, and it demonstrates a whole range of activities that generally have very little to do with the plot itself. There is in this film, however, a number of different montages, and the montages are used to describe not only the passing of time, but also the passing of other ideas. And finally, for most rom-coms, there is a reuniting of the lovers. The colours in La La Land are heavily reliant on what is known as the pigment primaries. These are the four colours that we teach children: red, yellow, green, and blue. But when we examine the claims that occur as a result of other people's analysis of the colours of this film, we'll find that perhaps the colours do not have quite the same meanings as are listed in those analyses, at least not for me. Anyway, we're going to look at these colour analyses in the order of appearance. Yellow, according to other authors, is all about optimism, enthusiasm, and progress. Red denotes passion, conflict, and intensity, whereas green has to do with envy, growth, and change. Then we have blue, which is designated as belonging to introspection, learning, and sadness. Black has to do with reality, despair, and doubt. Brown is not actually examined by any of the authors, although one of them, White, is all about simplicity, clarity, and purity. And the one that I've added to the notes below talks about Brown in terms of earthiness, and it's all about maturity and complexity. Purple is about fantasy, aspiration, and dignity. But we also find when we go through this film that there are a number of other colors that have specific classifications that are not examined by any of the authors. One of them, a most prominent one, is grey, and then we have orange and pink and teal. Now, teal is related to cyan, but teal itself is not a basic colour term. It is, however, a darkened form of cyan, and although it doesn't appear very often, all of those four colours that are not examined by other authors do appear frequently enough to have some significance. So let's get into it immediately. Yellow is the first colour of significance, and it's often paired with either red or blue. In the opening scene, we see yellow associated with optimism. And Mia's friend, also wearing yellow, is particularly associated with potential fun times ahead. And then we have the background of Mia's first audition, which shows some sort of progress, although Mia herself appears in blue. Mia avoids a writer in one of the parties that she attends and is actually showing a great deal of disdain and boredom with the meeting. Seb, in yellow trousers along with a red top, looks very much like a clown in his outfit. Mia mocks and challenges Seb, and Seb in red challenges her back. Wearing that same costume later on, Mia and Seb engage in a dance sequence where there is an unsustained rejection of the two of them. Then there's a yellow umbrella that appears to show itself in the background to demonstrate that the relationship is in progress, and a yellow ceiling at the observatory also indicates that progressive relationship. Seb's tie as they go out on a date indicates optimism and the relationship enjoyment. Mia's handbag shows that they're sharing their fun. Seb's friend's invitation to join his band is met with potential rejection. And then we have the background for Seb's contract signing, which shows some sort of career progress. Then we move on to an ambience colour where Mia attends one of Seb's concerts, and there is a hint of unease and jealousy in this scene. Mia's fantasy t-shirt is indicating of happiness, and her fantasy yellow kitchen during her pregnancy is also a state of expectancy. Mia's baby carries a yellow toy, which tends to indicate some form of optimism about its future life. So what then is the result of the analysis of all of these yellows? Well, certainly there is some optimism, there is some enthusiasm and some progress, but the yellow that is indicated, according to my analysis, misses a reality check. There are potentials here for lots of missteps. There are emotions that are far more difficult to ascertain rather than simply optimism and enthusiasm. In fact, yellow can actually code for something that is far more sinister. The next colour that appears is red, which, according to other authors, is all about passion, conflict, and intensity. Red frequently appears with yellow, as we've already seen. And in the opening scene, a vehicle also is seen next to the yellow one, showing some form of intensity of the passions that are on display by the actors in this scene. Seb also drives a red car. It's rarely seen in full and certainly not in any bright light, which makes it difficult to determine just what it represents. Mia serves the star wearing red, and this is indicative of surprise and admiration, and perhaps not a little envy of the star's status. Mia's pillows are indicative of her despondency at her failure to shine in the auditions that she undertakes. Her housemate, preparing for an outing, indicates that fun times are ahead. And when Mia is reflecting on her career and life progress, she is surrounded by red. Now, this indicates more despondency than actually passion or any form of intensity. The background for one of her audition scenes also indicates some form of intensity, and the jacket she wears for another audition with a green background this time indicates some sort of conflict that she is portraying. When we see Seb in his red shirt and instrument, he's going through the motions. There is not much here in the way of passion. Mia's handbag accentuates the mockery of Seb, and again, it's linked with yellow in this scene. That same handbag appears again, this time indulging in the passion of a studio tour in which she shows Seb around. The red jacket for her callback audition indicates that there is some sense of conflict and passion. Then we have the movie credits that are seen over Mia's face, and there is a sense of desperation and a need to rectify something that occurs in this scene. The theatre seats that she shares with Seb are indicative of potential movie thrills, and there is also a striped couch in her shared apartment, which shows a potential for excitement and passion. This time the red is associated with white. There is a reddish pink dress in one of the dating montage scenes, a red top, which shows an increasing sexual attraction. In fact, this is probably the most passionate scene in the entire film. Once again, we have a red and white striped image. This time it shows Seb's potential for excitement and passion about his work. Then we have the red light in the bedroom scene between Seb and Mia. And here we have potentially passion being enacted. The footstool that is used for Seb's signing of his contract with the band is also red. And here we have an engagement of his ambitions. The red-clad band member is an indicator of enjoyable work, and the theatre signs of Mia's upcoming play with blue is an attention grabber. Mia is seen in a red light, indicating some form of inner conflict as she prepares for her play, and Seb's piano keys in the photo shoot, this time tinged with black, shows that there is an intensity of performance. And then we have a series of red items in the flashback montages where passions are being reignited. The stage door in that same flashback indicates the potential for ambitions to be realized. There is also Seb's dream fulfilled in his red lit club, and Mia's acting dreams are fulfilled with the indication of a red balloon. And then, of course, there is the baby that she has, which fulfills her family aspirations, and that is also played off against a red background. So what's the results of all of this red? Yes, passions are associated with the color red, but it's not passions for each other so much as passions associated with their ambitions. There is some conflict indicated by the red, but the attempted sexual tension that normally accompanies the sighting of red is definitely unsatisfied. In fact, there is quite an unsatisfactory resolution that is associated with this red. Intensity does exist, but it's not associated with the love story that one would normally associate with a rom-com. Now, the next color that appears in the sequence of the films is brown. Brown is not analyzed, although it does have some connection with earthiness, maturity, and complexity. It's linked primarily to Seb's character. And here we see him right at the beginning, driving away. He's preoccupied and impatient with the fact that Mia, ahead of him in her car, has not moved along with the traffic. He checks on his dream club wearing that same shirt, indicating that he has some ambitions that are, for the moment, being kept quiet. The coffee spill on Mia's white shirt shows a hasty accident, but also indicates some of the panic associated with her upcoming auditions. Seb waits for Mia at the movie theatre, and here again is an indication of hopefulness and some anxiety. He shows pleasure at Mia's arrival, and when they go to the observatory after the movie, there is a certain amount of restrained emotion indicated by his frown. The jacket is now worn over his arm as the dates become more frequent, and he shows an indication of being quite relaxed. Seb's ambitions are tied to his brown piano, and here he demonstrates some expertise. At his concert with the band, he's wearing brown and showing a great deal of pleasure at its success. His confrontation with Mia about his goals and aspirations, and he shows quite a deal of despondency about their quarrel and also his inability to attend her play. When he is performing at his sister's wedding, he again demonstrates his confidence and capabilities, and we see him demonstrating his mastery over his ambitions by finally owning the club, and his final performance in front of Mia is also clad in brown. So what then is the result of this analysis of brown? Well, maturity is definitely demonstrated because Seb himself shows very little emotion. He seems to manage to handle Mia's ups and downs with equanimity. But the complexity is also there in that the complexity of brown is all about links to ambitions and skills, either ones that are already existent or ones that are to be attained. Moving on now to white. White is usually linked with another colour. It's usually to black or grey for male costumes, and it's also the most frequent colour that we see throughout the film itself. We first see Mia on her phone en route to work, practicing for her audition. In this same scene, she flips Seb off as he drives past her, showing that there is very little in the way of any sort of purity available as a result of her wearing white. The coffee spillage defiles the cleanliness of her costume, and the towel that she wears in her mirror image is all about a positive self-appraisal. The friend is holding a white throw, and the motive that is given here is really quite unclear, except that that throw then becomes part of Mia's background, the ambience, and also indicates nothing with clarity. On the other hand, Seb's white curtains indicate the clarity of his focus, and that is on his music. Seb's shirt is white when he is trying in vain to convince his boss of his sincerity, and that same shirt is seen later on with his ease of mobility and his ability to mirror Mia's disdain. When they meet again at the cafe, both of them are wearing white, and here we have a clean slate to start over. Seb introduces Mia to Jazz wearing the same costumes, and his interests are slowly becoming clarified. The white shirt for his cinema date is all about purity of motives, perhaps, and the white light across their fantasy dance is also about the purity of celestial moods. White stripes on the couch are an indication of the potential for unexpected things to happen, and her white dress and table as she is working on her script is also an indicator of experimenting with something new. And then we have a montage of Seb's white shirts. He remains open to the relationship, and his white shirt for his performance at the club also indicates a growing closeness with Mia. Still in that white shirt, he's approached by a friend who wants to give him a job. And although he's not very keen, he's still somewhat open to the proposal. Seb's white tea and pillows indicate a form of purity, even though the two of them are in bed together. He's not actually touching Mia or holding her in any form of close embrace. Then he has a white shirt on, getting ready to go on tour, and the white paper where he signs the contract details facts, and so is an indicator of reality. And then we see some of Mia's white. Here, she's wearing her white shirt uniform when she's quitting her job and entering into an unknown future. And then there is her play in construction. This is all about complex confusion. Sleeping alone in Seb's apartment shows her to be lonely and empty. We go back to Seb now. He is highlighted by white light, indicating his focus and attention. Then we go back to Mia for her performance, and here she is solitary and fearful about how well her play will be received. Seb is quite satisfied with himself with the performance at his sister's wedding and indicates quite a deal of pleasure wearing his white shirt. He is woken at night, also wearing white, and notified about a search for Mia. Then the next lot of white we see is when Mia, now the star, enters the same coffee shop where she had previously worked, only now she is the person that is being envied. When Seb is shown as the owner of his own club, white shows how organized he is. Mia's husband is shown with their daughter in white. We don't see anything more of him, so we know nothing about his life or motivations. And Seb is seen at home cooking for himself, indicating his independence. And from then on, we enter into Mia's retrospective fantasy. It begins with Seb's refusal of his friend's offer to engage him for the band. Seb is wearing white. Mia's success is indicated by a cheering crowd. And then there is the white room and Seb's white suit that are all about the beginning of the fantasy sequence that goes completely away from any link to the reality they had before. Here we see Mia in white, getting ready to be made up for her performance. Then there's the cosmic dance with Seb and the wrap that is used to wrap around the baby, her white top as she's holding her baby, and then the little shirt that is worn by the toddler herself. So what then is the result of my analysis of white in this film? There's nothing simple about the use of white. Some things are clarified, but not everything. Purity is quite questionable because there has been a reliance by other people on traditional meanings of white without an adequate interrogation of this color. My reading shows that white indicates a lot of things that are unexpected, unusual, unwanted at times, unknown, and it also indicates a fair degree of independence and even selfishness. Mia's montage, for example, is all about her needs, her aspirations, her results, her ambitions being fulfilled. There's nothing there about Seb's ideas and aspirations and what he would have liked as an alternative ending. Now, the next color we come across is green. Green doesn't appear all that often, but it does have a fair degree of significance. Most people would put green down to being associated with envy, with growth, and with change. But we see none of this in Mia's phone, which has a green face and indicates that it's time for her to change her venue because she is needed at the auditions. When Mia's housemate appears in green, there is no indicator of what this represents. The background for Mia's audition also is green, but what it actually represents is not established. When Seb and Mia are confronting each other the first time, there is also a green background. Is this a clash of values? Perhaps, but there certainly is no envy shown here, or growth, or for that matter, even change. When Seb visits Mia at work and she takes him outside, we see that the building itself is green, as are a number of bicycles outside it. What does this indicate? It isn't really made clear. But when we get to Mia's dress, when she is out with her then boyfriend, we see a change happening. Here, there is a change of values. There is a change of venue, and also ultimately a change of partner that occurs all within Mia, but not necessarily associated with anybody else. During the scene where Seb introduces Mia to the joys of jazz, he has a green bottle as the drink in front of him. This is all about his own values. And the curtains in his house, at night in particular, are also shown in green. And here we see the mutual discussion between Mia and Seb of their individual and discrete ambitions. We also see Mia untying her green apron when she quits her job to take on the role of scriptwriter and actress. Once she has chosen her new career as a playwright, we see her in green in both her dress and also carrying a green pen as she ponders what she is going to write about. Her top, when she becomes aware of the potential for Seb's ambitions to be realized, because the club he wants to own is now closed down, she's also wearing a green top. Now, back in Seb's apartment, once again with green curtains, we see here a devaluation by Mia of Seb's choices, and Seb is feeling let down by the fact that he has signed the contract and is now on his way to fulfilling his own ambitions, but they don't align with Mia's ideas of how their relationship should proceed. Mia wears that same top we saw earlier when she notes Seb's potential ambitions being realized, and this time she's showing herself as feeling deserted. Then there is the green sofa upon which Seb and Mia are seated when she is about to be interviewed for the big audition that will set her on her way to stardom. Seb's pleasure at his abilities at his sister's wedding is set against a green background. And then we have both a balloon and a streamer in green that celebrates the baby. So what then is the result of this green? Well, I cannot see any indication here whatsoever of envy. The closest we come to is that there is disagreement between Seb and Mia about their respective roles in life and where they're headed. And there is some growth towards their own ambitions, but definitely not towards each other. There is also very much a change of values that takes place, specifically associated with Mia's trajectory throughout the film. Whereas Seb remains true to his own ambitions and values and ideals. Which brings us now to blue. Mia wears a blue jacket to cover the coffee stains at her first audition, and this tends to indicate that she's hiding something. Then there is also the blue background, which becomes prominent as she auditions for a fairly somber role where she must indicate some form of sadness. The dress she wears to go partying with her housemates leaves introspection behind and looks as though she's about to enjoy herself. Nevertheless, there is a certain degree of self-reflection takes place. Here we can see some introspection, but also an inner interrogation. So it's a silent interrogation of herself and where she's going in life. When Seb is sacked from his job, he's wearing a blue suit and he fails at his negotiation to maintain that job. When we see Mia walking beside a blue building, she is looking as though she's quite elated and feeling free and easy in her life. And then we have a series of blues that Mia wears when she is first creating a relationship with Seb. There's the guided tour that she gives during her freedom hour at lunch. The ambience in the jazz bar shows them both in blue, although we know from earlier scenes that they are indeed wearing white. Here, they're opening up to each other. Then there's the blue light that is framing both her body and her face in the cinema when she is looking for Seb. The blue ambience of the dance scene at the observatory shows them developing some form of closeness and harmony in their relationship. And then we have a montage of blue items. There are a number of dates in which Mia wears a variety of blue outfits, each one of them indicating some form of contentment and also playtime. Wearing a blue top, Mia is encouraged by Seb to follow her dreams, and that is followed up by more montage, more dates, more closeness, more play. There is a blue painting in the background to indicate Seb's happiness with where his life is going. And when Mia shares Seb's bed, she's not only wearing blue, but indicating a fair degree of bliss. And then blue begins to change. Here we see her completely in blue, and this time she's showing that she is lonely at Seb's absence. Seb, meanwhile, also wearing blue, is working hard honouring his contract. And then we have the blue ambience around Mia as she ruminates about what she is going to write. She's also wearing blue as she continues to miss Seb, despite them having video calls to keep in touch with each other. And Seb continues to wear blue quite prolifically as he continues working on tour. When Mia attends one of Seb's concerts, there is a blue light that indicates that she recognizes his popularity, but also there is a sense of her beginning to lose him. The blue on the posters indicating her topic, So Long Boulder City, also is an indicator of some form of absence. Seb ponders his absence and inability to attend Mia's play in a blue suit, and he's demonstrating a fair degree of melancholia here. When Mia can't contact Seb prior to the play, she's also wearing a blue skirt. But then blue begins to switch again. Here, both of them are wearing blue when Seb brings Mia back to the audition that will set her on the road to stardom. And then we have them both again in the post-audition debrief, where Seb is encouraging Mia to believe in herself. After 5 years' absence, Mia and Seb meet again at his now newly acquired club. And this sets off the retro fantasy montage, where we see Mia in a variety of blues, this time indicating what her life had been like, but with the inclusion of Seb instead of her husband. The ambience, as they both give last farewell looks towards each other, shows a fair degree of not just sadness of what might have been, but also a little regret and yet the surety that they have taken their paths and now are heading towards different futures. So the results of this blue indicates some yearning and sadness, but this only occurs in the second part of the film. The initial blue is all about bliss, about shared ideals, and some verbal exchanges, and definitely support for each other. Which brings us now to black. According to other authors, black is all about reality, despair, and doubt. So does that in fact bear out? When Seb meets Mia at the cafe, he's wearing black trousers. When he prepares for his performance with the band, again, there are black trousers. When he tells Mia about his touring, he also is wearing black. and he's fitted for a black suit to enable him to tour in a particular type of costume. When he's on tour, he's wearing that black suit, and when he FaceTimes Mia, he also is wearing that black outfit. When he surprises Mia with his return to create dinner for her, he's wearing black. And Seb and Mia both appear to be wearing black. They have a fallout over his touring absences and their differing life paths. We see Seb again wearing black for the photo shoot. At the photo shoot, we see the unusual sight of a keyboard that has black instead of white keys. And Seb and Mia fall out over the non-attendance at her play, which of course puts their relationship in doubt. Seb plays a black piano at his sister's wedding. Seb's suit for their cosmic dance during that fantasy sequence is also in black. So what then can we make of black in this film? Reality? Yes, definitely. Black is associated with reality throughout. There is a little despair associated with black, but it's more associated with blue. But as far as doubt goes, that does not seem to have any relationship to the appearance of black. And this is once again because there is a reliance on the traditional themes and associations that people have with the color black. My view is that black is determined here by the seriousness of whatever is going on, the fact that both Mia, but especially Seb, are determined to follow their own life paths, and there is a degree of honesty that adheres to the black that is quite different from the way that honesty is presented at any other time throughout the film. One of the less frequent colors that we see in the film is purple. Now, purple, according to other authors, is about fantasy, aspiration, and dignity. We see purple firstly as they appear as the garbage bins outside Mia's apartment. Mia's summer date montage is also an indicator of aspiration, only this time it's all about aspiration for relationship. When Mia visits Seb's apartment in purple, she encourages his ambitions. She's wearing a purple jacket when she hires the theatre for her play, and when she unsuccessfully attempts to call Seb about his absence when the play is due to begin, then she's also seen in a purple light. Her dress that she wore for her dance at the observatory in the fantasy retrospect is now replaced by an identical dress, this time in purple. So the results is that fantasy does appear, but only at the end in relation to purple. Dignity is nowhere established throughout the use of purple, but aspiration is certainly demonstrated, and holding on to personal power is another aspect that tends to be overlooked by other authors that examine the use of purple in this film. And now that brings us to the missing colours. One of the colours that is most prolific is grey. Mia drives a grey car. When Seb is practicing at his piano and during the post-pool party dance, he's wearing grey. The boar at the pool party is also wearing grey. And when we meet Mia's boyfriend, we discover that he's wearing grey, and so too is the surrounding frame for the mirror in which we first see him. Seb wears grey shirts in some of the summer date montage, and when he's signing his contract with the group, he also is wearing grey. When Seb arrives at Mia's parents' home to take her back to the city, she is wearing grey, and here we see her rather shocked and surprised. Seb himself is wearing grey as he tries to convince her to return to the city with him. And the next time we see grey, it's on Mia. She is now the star, and the people in white are the servers in the cafe. And then the final time that grey appears, again, it's associated with Seb. He's in a film fantasy where he is watching his and Mia's child. So what are the results of Gray's use in this film? There's a great deal of hidden power. There's a sense of stability, and there is also a sense of overcoming challenges, all associated with the use of grey. Orange also appears a number of times, and here we see a potential for alarm. Mia's housemate is alerting her to the boyfriend arriving. There's fruit next to the FaceTime call between Mia and Seb. Seb, unsuccessfully waiting for Mia outside the theatre, is shown with a streak of orange light. But perhaps the most important part of orange in this film is Mia's hair. Mia herself has a hair colour that is associated generally with a fiery temper, a sharp tongue, a highly oversexed and mischievous person, but none of those are aspected. So even though there is the potential for these alarming things to occur, alarm never really shows itself in quite the way that one would expect with the addition of orange. And then we have pink. Now, pink is all about the potential for love, vulnerability, but also in this film is associated with sadness. The red and white dress that Mia is wearing when she is writing the finishing touches to her script is seen as pink in the distance, and she's coming out of a pink building to go on a date with Seb. The skirt she wears in part of the summer date montage is also pink. And then we have the pink ambience that occurs around Seb's bed. And we also see pink ambience when she goes to visit him at his apartment and encourages him to follow his dreams. And then finally, we have the color teal. Here, it tends to signal dissatisfaction with some form of connection. There is self-doubt as Mia wears teal following her auditions. In the second audition, she's also wearing a teal-colored top. And here, her role is one of questioning. And finally, we also have the pool party singer who is wearing teal. Only here, the teal indicates Seb's dislike of the activity in which he is engaged, and in particular, with having to play Mia's choice of song. All right, then, having trawled through all those colours in this film, what do I make of them? Well, my summary is that yellow indicates some optimism, some enthusiasm, some progress, but basically it's about reality, derision, and re-evaluation. Red can be associated with passions, but those passions are associated with ambitions. There is some conflict that occurs with red, but red lacks the adequate sexual tension that makes a rom-com believable. Brown has maturity and complexity, the links to ambitions and skills that are primarily associated with Seb. White shows that there is nothing simple about its use. Some things are clarified, but basically there is questionable purity because of the reliance on traditional meanings of white without adequate examination of its use. We see instead, from my reading, that white is all about the unexpected, the unusual, the unwanted, the unknown, independence, and also a degree of selfishness, particularly the selfishness that comes from Mia's fantasies. And then we have green. There's no envy at all indicated by green that I can see. There is some growth, but basically it's about personal passions and ambitions. It's about disagreements, and it's also about changing of values. Blue is about bliss and sharing, about dialogue, either between the two protagonists, Seb and Mia, but also Mia's inner dialogue. There is a fair degree of yearning, and this occurs towards the end of the film. The initial bliss and shared ideals come undone as a result of changes in their values. the green changes, and so the reading for blue changes. As far as black is concerned, my view is that it's all about seriousness, determination, and honesty, rather than the reliance on traditional themes about being despair and doubt. Purple indicates aspirations and power, not necessarily fantasy, although purple is used as an element, a very important element in fantasies. And then we have grey, which is all about hidden strength, stability, and the ability to overcome challenges. Orange gives us the potential for alarm that does not really eventuate in the manner in which we normally would expect from the appearance of orange. Pink is all about the potential for love, but it's also about vulnerability, and there is some sadness linked to pink, usually because of loss. And then finally, teal indicates dissatisfaction and disconnectedness between what is going on and how the protagonists feel about the situation. And that brings me to some final thoughts about this film. There are a number of very unsatisfactory romantic comedy elements. It strays from the romance comedy trajectory by not actually indicating enough charisma between the characters. There is very little bonding that is seen between Mia and Seb, despite all of the montages that are presented. There is minimal closeness and there is minimal eye contact. The pair tend to be looking at other things rather than at each other, and when they look at each other, it is not with a great deal of love or affection. The investment in the film is all about their ambitions, not in the relationship that they have. The fulfillment of the ambitions actually occurs at a cost to the relationship. Neither of them is prepared to bend to accommodate the other. The alternative fantasy ending at the end of the film denies the reality of Mia's situation. It denigrates her relationship with her husband. The lovers do not reunite, so that means that the traditional rom-com ending is definitely not available. And one is left at the end of the film with those haunting images of the two of them looking at each other, Seb with a smile, Mia with nothing but regret on her face. So are the two of them really happy? We don't know. What do you think about the film and about the way in which the colours portray the story? Leave your comments below if you're interested. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me through this marathon of the film. It wasn't the way I had actually intended to present it, but hey, needs must. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.